Most home gardeners wait too long. They hold off until the air feels warm and the mornings smell like spring. By then, the cool season window that produces the most nutrient-dense harvests has already closed. The vegetables that tend to be richest in iron, folate, and vitamin C need cool soil and early roots to develop properly. Miss the window, and you spend the rest of the season catching up. I have spent years growing food at home and learning which crops actually reward early timing. And today I am sharing 22 nutrient-rich vegetables you should sow right now before spring takes that window away. Stay with me through number 17, because it is the one most gardeners have never tried despite being one of the most nutritionally impressive vegetables you can grow. And I have a bonus tip at the end that will change how you prepare your beds before anything goes in. The first vegetable that belongs in your early spring garden is spinach. Spinach is a reliable source of iron, folate, and vitamin K, and homegrown spinach harvested fresh is categorically fresher than anything sitting in a bag at the store. The timing issue is simple. Spinach bolts to seed once temperatures push consistently above 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Plant too late, and the leaves turn bitter within weeks of germination. In zones 6 through 10, direct sowing right now works well. Gardeners in zones 3 through 5 should start seeds indoors and transplant once the ground is workable. Bloomsdale Longstanding is the classic Savoy variety with crinkled leaves and solid cold tolerance. Thai and Space are smooth leaf options that hold up well in cooking. Sow half an inch deep and 1 inch apart, then thin to 4 to 6 inches once seedlings emerge. The insider tip: a light nitrogen application 2 to 3 weeks after germination tends to increase leaf size noticeably without pushing the plant toward early bolting. The second vegetable you cannot afford to skip is kale. Here is something most gardeners do not know. Kale tastes better after frost. Cold temperatures cause the plant to convert stored starches into sugars, producing leaves that are sweeter and more tender than anything grown through warm conditions. Varieties like winter boar and red boar handle cold beautifully. Lacinato, also called dinosaur kale, has bumpy, darker leaves with a milder, earthier flavor that many people prefer raw. Red Russian kale produces flat, frilly-edged leaves with purple stems and a tenderness that improves with cold exposure. In zones 4 through 9, sowing now gives you the full advantage. Thin seedlings to 12 to 18 inches apart because kale gets surprisingly large. The insider tip: always harvest outer leaves first, leaving the center crown intact. One kale plant maintained this way can keep producing for months on end. The third vegetable is Swiss chard. Chard is often overlooked in favor of spinach or kale, but it has a distinct advantage both of them lack. It tolerates moderate heat better than most cool season greens, meaning it bridges the gap between cool season and warm season growing. You get a longer harvest window from a single early sowing than almost anything else on this list. In zones 6 through 10, direct sowing right now is ideal. Gardeners in zones 3 through 5 should start indoors and transplant once nighttime temperatures hold above freezing. Bright lights produces stems in vivid shades of red, orange, yellow, and white. Ford Hook Giant gives you thick stems and deeply textured dark green leaves. Ruby Red holds its crimson color even after cooking. Sow half an inch deep and 2 inches apart, then thin to 8 to 12 inches. The insider tip: chard seeds are clusters. Multiple seedlings emerge from one spot. Thin aggressively and toss those thinnings into a salad as microgreens. The fourth vegetable is broccoli. Most people grow broccoli, but very few grow it well, and the difference usually comes down to one thing: temperature at head formation. Broccoli that matures in cool conditions produces dense, tightly packed heads. Broccoli that matures in warmth tends to produce loose, open, off-flavored heads that bolt within days. Start seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. Green Magic and Bellstar are reliable varieties with good flavor. Purple sprouting broccoli takes a different approach entirely, sending up dozens of small florets over weeks rather than one central head, which many home gardeners prefer for continuous harvesting. Transplant seedlings once they have 4 to 6 true leaves, spacing 18 to 24 inches apart, and burying the stems slightly deeper than it grew in the container. The insider tip: broccoli is more water sensitive than most people realize. Uneven moisture during head formation often produces small, loose heads. Keep it consistent. The fifth vegetable is peas. This is one of the most timing-sensitive crops on the list. Peas stop producing almost immediately when temperatures climb above 80 degrees, which means every week you delay is a week of harvest permanently lost. They also happen to be one of the better plant-based sources of protein and zinc you can grow at home. In zones 7 through 10, direct sowing now is ideal. Gardeners in zones 4 through 6 should plant as soon as the soil is workable. Sugar Snap and Super Sugar Snap are the gold standard for edible pod varieties. Oregon Sugar Pod is a reliable snow pea. Sugar and in Green Arrow are shelling types that mature quickly. Sow 1 inch deep and 2 to 3 inches apart with a simple trellis since peas climb using tendrils. The insider tip almost no one mentions. Peas fix nitrogen. They pull it from the atmosphere and deposit it into the soil. Plant them where your summer crops will go and you improve the soil without spending $1 on fertilizer. The sixth vegetable is lettuce. There is a reason lettuce is one of the most searched gardening topics every spring. It is fast, it is satisfying to grow, and the difference in freshness between a leaf cut from your own garden and one pulled from a plastic container is immediately obvious. Lettuce bolts in heat and turns bitter within days of temperatures pushing above 80 degrees, so early planting is the only way to get the full season. In zones 8 through 10, direct sow outdoors now. Cooler region gardeners should start indoors under lights or in a cold frame. Red Sales and Simpson Elite are loose-leaf varieties ready in as few as 40 days. Paris Island Cos is a romaine type with crisp ribs and outstanding flavor. Butter Crunch forms loose, tender heads with a mildness no grocery store variety matches. Sow 1/8 to 1/4 inch deep since lettuce needs some light to germinate. The insider tip: succession plant a small amount every 2 to 3 weeks. One large batch bolts all at once. Smaller, staggered batches give you a continuous harvest from now through early summer. The seventh vegetable is beets, and this one is worth slowing down on because most people only think of the root. Beets give you 2 harvests from a single planting. The greens, which are tender and mineral-rich, and the root, which has a deep, earthy sweetness that develops fully only in cool soil. Wait too long, and the roots turn woody and lose that sweetness entirely. In zones 6 through 10, direct sowing now works well. Detroit Dark Red is the benchmark root variety with classic flavor. Boulder is a golden beet with a milder, less earthy taste that tends to convert people who claim they do not like beets. Hyaja reveals pink and white rings when sliced and has a slightly sweeter, more delicate flavor. Sow 1/2 inch deep and 1 inch apart. The insider tip: what looks like one beet seed is actually a cluster of fused seeds. Multiple seedlings will emerge. Thin to 3 to 4 inches apart and use those thinnings as microgreens in salads. The eighth vegetable is carrots. Carrots need loose, cool soil to germinate and develop properly. Plant when the soil is too warm and roots fork, crack, and pale out before they develop the sweetness that makes homegrown carrots worth the effort. In zones 7 through 10, direct sowing now is ideal. Knots types like Napoli and Yaya produce sweet, cylindrical roots with clean flavor. Danvers varieties handle heavier soils better than most. Thumbelina and Parisian are short, round varieties that work in containers or rocky beds. Sow 1/4 inch deep in rows 12 inches apart, then thin to 2 to 3 inches once the first true leaves appear. The insider tip: sow radishes in the same row. They sprout in 5 to 7 days. Mark the row so you do not disturb the slow germinating carrots, and break up surface crust as they emerge. It is one of the most practical companion planting tricks in the cool season garden. The ninth vegetable is garlic. Garlic has been cultivated for thousands of years across virtually every food culture on Earth, which is not an accident. It is traditionally valued for both culinary and wellness purposes, and homegrown garlic harvested at full maturity has a richness of flavor that store-bought bulbs, often cured and stored for months before they reach you, rarely match. While fall is the ideal planting window, February planting in zones 5 through 9 can still yield a solid harvest when the remaining cool weeks are used well. Choose the largest cloves from your seed garlic. Clove size tends to predict bulb size at harvest. Music, German Red, and Chestnut Red are hardneck varieties with large, complex-flavored cloves. California Early and Enchilium Red are soft-neck types that store longer. Plant pointed end up, 2 inches deep in northern gardens, 1 inch deep in warmer zones, 6 inches apart. The insider tip: stop fertilizing garlic about a month before harvest. Late nitrogen pushes leafy top growth at the expense of bulb development, which is the opposite of what you want at the finish line. The 10th vegetable is cabbage. Cabbage has a reputation for being plain, but a head of cabbage grown through cool spring conditions and harvested at the right time has a sweetness and density that the grocery store version almost never delivers. Any heat stress during head formation causes loose, split-prone heads. Start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost, which means now for most gardeners. Copenhagen Market and Golden Acre produce reliable round green heads. Red Acre adds striking color and stores well through winter. Savoy King produces crinkled heads with a more delicate texture that many people prefer raw. Space transplants 12 to 18 inches apart in nitrogen-rich soil. The insider tip: install row covers immediately after transplanting, before you see a single cabbage moth. Reacting to worm damage after it starts is always less effective than preventing egg laying entirely. The 11th vegetable is kohlrabi. Most gardeners walk past kohlrabi at the nursery because it looks unusual. That is a missed opportunity. Kohlrabi produces a swollen stem that is crisp, mildly sweet, and edible raw like an apple or cooked in soups and stir-fries. Both the stem and the young leaves are usable, making it a two-harvest plant from a single seed. It matures quickly in cool weather and turns tough and fibrous in heat, so early timing matters. In zones 5 through 9, sowing or transplanting now works well. Early white Vienna matures in 55 days. Early purple Vienna adds color with purple skin and creamy white flesh inside. Sow a 1/4 inch deep and thin to 6 inches apart. The insider tip: harvest at 2 to 3 inches across. Most first-time kohlrabi growers wait too long, hoping for a bigger yield, and end up with fibrous, bitter stems that are not worth eating. Smaller is almost always better with this one. The 12th vegetable is turnips, and they deserve more respect than they typically get. A turnip planted now can be on your table in 35 days. Not 35 weeks. 35 days. And you get 2 crops: the root and the greens, which are calcium and folate rich and often more tender than the root itself. Wait until spring is fully arrived and the entire cool season window closes before you have harvested a single thing. Direct sowing works in zones 5 through 10 right now. Hakurei is a Japanese salad variety sweet enough to eat raw, which surprises most people the first time they try one fresh from the garden. Tokyo Cross matures in 35 days. 7 Top is grown specifically for greens rather than roots. Sow 1/2 inch deep and thin to 4 to 6 inches for full-size roots. The insider tip: uneven watering is the single biggest cause of woody, overly pungent turnips. Consistent soil moisture is the difference between a turnip worth eating and one that ends up in the compost. The 13th vegetable is radishes, and here is something worth saying plainly. Most people underestimate radishes. They treat them as a filler crop, something to toss in while waiting for the real vegetables. But radishes sown now in virtually every zone from 3 through 10 give you a harvest in as few as 22 days. They loosen compacted soil. They help mark slow germinating rows, and certain varieties like watermelon radish have a visual beauty inside that makes them worth growing just for that. Cherry Belle is the classic 22-day variety with a crisp, mild bite. French breakfast produces elegant, elongated roots. Watermelon radish looks completely ordinary from outside, but sliced open it reveals a deep magenta interior with a sweeter, milder flavor than standard types. Sow 1/2 inch deep and 1 inch apart. The insider tip: sow a small amount every week rather than one large batch. Radishes bolt fast. Weekly small batches give you a continuous supply of crisp, mild roots instead of one wave that all turns pithy at once. The 14th vegetable is arugula. Arugula is one of the more polarizing crops in the garden. Some people love the peppery bite. Others find it aggressive. But if you have only ever eaten arugula from a store bag that has been sitting in refrigeration for days, you may not have tasted arugula at its actual best. Freshly cut, young arugula from a home garden has a complex, balanced pepper flavor that wilts beautifully into pasta and flatbread in a way that elevates a simple weeknight meal. Direct sowing in zones 6 through 10 right now captures the full cool season window. Wild arugula, also called sylvetta, has finely dissected leaves and a more complex flavor, and it bolts significantly more slowly than standard types. Astro is a fast-maturing variety ready in 35 days. Sow a quarter-inch deep and thin to 4 to 6 inches, or broadcast thickly for baby greens. The insider tip: harvest in the early morning. Afternoon heat intensifies the bitterness and reduces the delicate layering of flavor that makes fresh arugula distinctive. The 15th vegetable is leeks. Leeks are mild, sweeter than onions, and the backbone of some of the most satisfying soups and broths you can make from scratch. They also require 90 to 120 days, which means starting them indoors right now is the difference between a fall harvest and no harvest at all. Most gardeners who fail with leeks simply start too late. Sow a quarter-inch deep in flats or cell packs at around 60 to 65 degrees. American flag is the reliable classic. King Richard matures faster and produces long, slender shanks. Bandit is cold-hardy and bred to overwinter for spring harvest. Transplant once seedlings are pencil-thick, setting them in trenches 4 to 6 inches deep. Then he'll soil progressively around the stems through the season to increase the length of the tender white portion. The insider tip: the most common leek failure is transplanting before the seedlings are genuinely ready. Resist the urge to rush them out. Leeks planted too young almost never establish well. The 16th vegetable is Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts have a reputation problem because most people have only eaten them overcooked and underseasoned. A Brussels sprout harvested from your own garden after the first frost of autumn, roasted simply with olive oil and salt, is a genuinely different food. That sweetness, which develops only with cool maturation, cannot be replicated in sprouts grown or stored in warm conditions. These require up to 180 days, and starting indoors right now is the only path to that late-season harvest. Long Island Improved is the classic open-pollinated standard. Jade Cross and Diablo produce more uniform sprouts along the stalk. Reuben produces beautiful reddish-purple sprouts with a nuttier, more complex flavor. Start 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost. Then transplant once seedlings have 6 to 8 true leaves at 24 to 30 inches apart. The insider tip: about a month before your expected first fall frost, pinch out the growing tip of each plant. This redirects all remaining energy into maturing the existing sprouts rather than producing new growth, giving you a more consistent and rewarding final harvest. The 17th vegetable is the one most early-season gardeners have never tried, and that is a genuine loss. That vegetable is celeriac, also called turnip-rooted celery. Most people know what celery is. Very few have grown celeriac, which produces a knobby, cream-fleshed root with a clean, mellow celery flavor that is exceptional roasted, pureed, or shaved raw into salads. It is traditionally valued in European kitchen gardens and has been associated in food research with a range of beneficial compounds, including phthalides and vitamin K. It requires up to 120 days, and starting seeds indoors right now is not early. It is exactly the right time. Seeds need consistent warmth around 70 degrees and can take 3 weeks to germinate. Press them onto moist seed-starting mix without covering since they need light to sprout. Prinz is smooth-skinned and straightforward to prepare. Brilliant produces large, round roots with mild, clean flavor. Alabaster is an heirloom prized for storage quality and deeply complex taste. Transplant once seedlings have 6 to 8 true leaves, spacing 12 inches apart in consistently moist, rich soil. The insider tip: celeriac is drought-sensitive. Dry spells cause the roots to crack and hollow, which ruins months of patient growing. Deep, consistent watering is not optional with this one. The 18th vegetable is cauliflower. Cauliflower has a reputation for being difficult, and honestly, that reputation is partly deserved. It is the least forgiving brassica in the garden. Any stress, whether from heat, drought, or transplant shock, tends to produce heads that button prematurely or develop an off, sulfurous flavor. But when conditions are right, a homegrown cauliflower head is something special. Dense, sweet, and miles beyond the pale, often bland heads you find at the store. Start seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. Snowball self-blanching naturally curls its leaves over the developing head without any effort from you. Graffiti and Violet Queen are striking purple varieties. Cheddar produces orange heads with higher beta-carotene content than white types. Romanesco, with its spiraling fractal peaks, is extraordinary both visually and in flavor. Spaced transplants 18 to 24 inches apart in rich soil. The insider tip: for white varieties that do not self-blanch, tie the outer leaves over the head once it reaches 2 to 3 inches across. This one small step prevents yellowing and keeps the head tight and well-flavored. The 19th vegetable surprises most gardeners: sweet potatoes. Most people associate sweet potatoes with summer planting and warm soil, and that timing is correct for putting slips in the ground. But starting slips indoors right now gives the plants a meaningful head start that tends to translate into larger, more developed tubers at harvest. Sweet potatoes are one of the better-known sources of beta-carotene in the home garden, and purple varieties like Stokes Purple are associated with high anthocyanin content, the same antioxidant class found in blueberries. To start slips, partially submerge a sweet potato in water until sprouts emerge, then twist slips free once they reach 4 to 6 inches and root them in moist soil. Beauregard is the most widely adaptable variety with heavy yields. Georgia Jet is a shorter season type suited to compressed growing seasons. Plant slips 12 inches apart in rows 3 feet apart in warm soil and full sun once the ground has warmed properly. The insider tip: pinching back the vines in midsummer redirects energy from foliage into root development. Many gardeners skip this step and end up with abundant vines and smaller tubers than their plants were capable of producing. The 20th vegetable is celery. Celery has a reputation for being difficult, but much of that difficulty comes from one thing: water. Celery is a heavy drinker, and it cannot tolerate drought stress even briefly. Dry periods cause stalks to become hollow, stringy, and bitter, which is where most home celery attempts go wrong. It requires 100 days from seed to harvest, so starting indoors now is not optional. Seeds need light to germinate, so press them onto moist seed-starting mix without covering and keep the medium around 70 degrees. Utah Tall and Conquistador produce classic green stalks. Cutting celery, also called leaf celery, produces abundant, intensely flavored leaves on thin stalks and is substantially easier to grow than traditional stalk types. If you are growing celery for the first time, cutting celery is the smarter starting point. Transplant once seedlings have 4 to 6 true leaves, spacing 8 to 10 inches apart in consistently moist, rich soil. The insider tip: if reliable watering is a challenge for you, grow cutting celery instead. It is more drought tolerant and still gives you that deep, fresh celery flavor in cooking. The 21st vegetable is parsnips. Parsnips are one of the more patient crops in the vegetable garden, requiring 100 to 130 days to develop fully. But the reward is a root vegetable with a sweet, complex, nutty flavor that is genuinely unlike anything else you can grow. Like kale and Brussels sprouts, parsnips improve with frost. Cold temperatures convert stored starches into sugars after the first hard freeze, which is when many gardeners say the flavor truly peaks. Plant in zones 5 through 9 now, direct sowing in February and early March, and the harvest lands in late fall exactly when that flavor transformation happens. Hollow Crown is the classic heirloom variety. Harris Model produces smooth, uniform roots that are easier to peel and prepare. Sow ½ inch deep and 1 inch apart, then thin to 4 to 6 inches. The insider tip: always use fresh parsnip seed. Parsnip seeds lose viability faster than almost any other vegetable. Old seed is one of the most common and most preventable causes of a completely failed parsnip planting. The 22nd and final vegetable you must sow before spring takes off is fennel. Fennel is one of the more medicinally interesting plants in the kitchen garden. The bulb is mild, anise-flavored, and extraordinary roasted or shaved raw. The fronds are aromatic and useful in cooking. And fennel has a long history of traditional use for digestive comfort, with the essential oils in the fronds being the subject of ongoing food research. You get 3 harvests from one plant: bulb, fronds, and seeds. But fennel bolts under any stress, making timing and careful handling essential. Start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost, handling seedlings gently to minimize root disturbance. Florence fennel is the standard bulbing type. Orion is a bolt-resistant hybrid that handles unpredictable spring weather better than most varieties. Antares is another bolt-resistant option with dense, heavy bulbs and excellent flavor. Transplant 12 inches apart in fertile, well-drained soil once hard frost danger has passed. The insider tip: fennel is allelopathic, meaning it releases root compounds that inhibit the growth of many neighboring plants. Keep it at the edge of your garden or in its own dedicated space, away from tomatoes, peppers, and beans. And now for the bonus tip that will change how you prepare your beds before anything goes in the ground. Compost tea. Before you sow anything from this list, steep a cup of finished compost in a gallon of dechlorinated water for 24 to 48 hours, aerating it if possible. Water your prepared beds with this tea about a week before sowing. What you are doing is introducing a concentrated population of beneficial soil microorganisms before the seeds arrive. Healthy microbial activity in the soil tends to improve nutrient availability, support faster germination, and help seedlings establish more strongly in the early weeks. It is not a magic fix, but gardeners who make this a routine consistently describe healthier early growth and fewer problems with damping off and root disease. The vegetable list gets you started. The compost tea gets your soil ready to support what you are planting. Both together is where the results happen. Thank you for staying with me through the full list. Here at Easy Harvest Gardens, we are not just talking about growing food. We are talking about growing food with intention, with knowledge of what is in the soil and what ends up on your plate. If this video helped you think differently about your early spring window, share and give this video a like, and explore the rest of our videos. There is a lot more growing here waiting for you.